Hello everyone, my name is Reed, and this is Storytime. Today we are going to be reading some malicious compliance stories, so take a seat, relax, and enjoy. Sorry, I'm not a courier. I work for a large shipping company in Canada. I work early in the morning loading trucks, but as needed, would go over and deliver packages. At first, it was here and there, but it soon became normal that after my regular scheduled shift, I would go out and deliver. This wasn't a requirement of my job. I was basically doing it as a favor because it looks really bad on the managers to have packages go undelivered, and I thought it would look good on me. I did this for a few years without any issue. One winter, one of the drivers at a different depot slipped and hurt himself while out delivering. This caused a new initiative to force all drivers to wear super slip-proof boots that had glass embedded in them. These run about $250. All of the drivers received vouchers that would cover the cost because they are requirements of doing the job. When I went to the manager to ask if I would be getting a voucher, he replied with, "No, sorry, you're not a courier," and walked away. I went and told the other employees that were in a similar situation to mine, and they were pretty displeased. The next day, as usual after my shift, the manager started telling me the things I would be delivering that day. I waited for him to finish and responded with, "Sorry, I'm not a courier." He looked very confused, like he didn't remember our conversation from the day before. So, I explained that I wasn't going to go out delivering because I wouldn't have the proper safety equipment. He had that "I just smelt a fart" face and just looked at me for a second. He said, "If you just work a few extra shifts, then you can afford to buy the boots yourself." I was actually stunned and didn't know what to say, so we just stared at each other for a minute. I eventually replied, sorta laughing because of how ridiculous this is, "So you want me to work without the safety equipment you made mandatory until I can afford to buy it for myself?" He scoffed at me like a 14-year-old girl and walked away without an answer. A few others followed suit when the managers asked them to go out delivering after their shifts. They replied with, "Sorry, I'm not a courier." After all was said and done, they had so many leftover packages, a few companies started dropping contracts, which directly affects the managers' end-of-year bonuses. They ended up having to give promotion to a lot of workers that were doing double work for half the pay to cover all of the backlog. So we all ended up getting paid more to do less, and best of all, we finally got our safety boots. I think OP should try to get back paid for the past 2 years of extra work. Oh, I can only come in if I'm on the official schedule? Alright. Some backstory. I took some time off of uni and got hired at a big-name retail store in a local mall. Been working there for a while now, and school starts up again, so I gave my 2 weeks as a courtesy. My immediate manager says she's sorry to see me go, then asked me to come in on a certain day even though I'm not on the schedule to finish up some inventory. Okay, no problem. Fast forward to yesterday, when I arrived at work, I go to clock in and then get an error. My immediate manager comes over with a really puzzled look on her face and overrides it. Odd. Maybe scheduling just forgot to add me? Oh well. 2 hours, I'm lugging a massive cart full of clothes across the store when Big Boss, our store manager, shows up. The conversation went something like this. Big Boss: "Why are you still here? Didn't you give up your 2 weeks? Me: "Well, yes, but..." Department manager asked me to come in to finish inventory. Big Boss: "She has more than enough people for that, and you aren't on the schedule. Stop working and leave, please." Cue malicious compliance. I abandoned the cart right there in the middle of the store and went to clock out. Fun fact, one of my coworkers had a mandatory hour-long break coming up that I would normally fill in for. Since I couldn't, that meant they had to find someone within 15 minutes. Guess who was the only employee on the floor? Big Boss couldn't even go up to his office to grab a water bottle because there was a massive line at our station. I walked out the store 6 hours early, knowing the manager who kicked me out needed to do my job for the next hour. Good times. Once I put in a courtesy 2 weeks notice, there's no way I'm coming in to do extra work to help out with inventory. OP is a bigger person than me, and for that, I applaud you. Follow hospital policy. The patient must be brought down in a bed. I work as a wardsman, aka porter, in a private hospital in Australia. Now, you don't need any training to do this job, so we are pretty much the least qualified people at the hospital in an industry where there are a lot of qualified people around. Doctors, nurses, radiographers, etc. I think it's because of this that I got a lot of run-ins with staff/patients who think I'm stupid because I'm just a wardsman. Or it could be because I have a face like a stunned mullet. I went to pick up a patient from the ward to bring them down for an ultrasound. Department policy requires us to bring the patient down in their bed for the exam. This is a recent change and was done so because sometimes patients aren't very mobile and require a lot of assistance. And the sonographers don't have the time getting every patient from the wheelchair to exam table if they have low mobility. So the policy was instituted. Ultrasound patients come down in their bed. This patient, however, was coming down from the maternity ward, and our hospital recently started offering double beds so partners can stay with them overnight. The issue with the double bed is they don't fit through a lot of doorways, especially in the older section of the hospital. So, like the thoughtful young man I am, I fetch a wheelchair. I chatted with the patient and the nurse to make sure they were well enough to come down on the wheelchair. Everyone was happy. The patient was very mobile and was able to get up out of the bed and walk the length of the room to the wheelchair unaided. So I think to myself, I don't have to worry about this new policy because I know the reason behind it and this patient won't be an issue. I wheel the patient into the waiting bay just as the sonographer walks out of her exam room and she notices me bringing her patient down in a wheelchair and not to bed. She went off at me in the middle of the waiting room in front of a couple nurses and patients. How I should know better. This is a waste of her time. Policy is policy, and you don't mess with policy, especially if you are just a wardsman. All in all, she seemed a little upset. She told me to wheel her back and bring her down in a bed instead. She had not let me get a word in during her tirade to explain, and her command had a sense of finality to it. So, I took the patient back to her room and asked if she minded if I took her down in the bed. She said she didn't mind, but was concerned that her bed wouldn't fit in the exam room. I told her that I shared her concern, and off we went. I had to take a slightly circuitous route to get to radiology because it's located in the old part of the hospital and had narrow doorways. I parked the bed in two of the waiting bays, didn't fit into one, and knocked on the door and let the sonographer know that her patient was here in her bed, just as she asked. She told me to bring the patient straight into the room. Well, about that. I walked out and stood facing the double bed. Yeah, she's not gonna fit. The sonographer just stood there as the patient hopped out of the bed and walked into the exam room and hopped up onto the exam table without any assistance. I feel like just a little bit more justice to the sonographer would have been perfect, but I guess the point still came across. Tell me to smile? Bet this isn't what you meant. After a long, stressful day at school, I was picked up by my dad to go to his house. My parents are divorced. You could see in my face that I was tired and just wanted to go home. I was in the back seat staring out of the window, and my dad decided to say, "Come on, smile. Don't look so miserable." Most people don't smile if they're tired or stressed. Common sense. I'd had enough of being told to smile by anyone. Old men, my parents, etc. So I decided I would follow his request. I put on the biggest, craziest, most Joker-like smile I could form and held it until I went to bed. We had to stop at the shops to get dinner. Everyone thought I was crazy, but it was worth it. He was completely and utterly embarrassed. Tried to get me to stop as we were getting stared at. Alas, I did not, as I wanted to prove my point. He has barely ever told me to smile ever again, as I do this to other people as well. If people I don't know tell me to smile, I do my Joker smile. Oh man, OP, that is true dedication right there. I probably would have done something like this, but not really had the drive to follow through as much as you did. So, hats off. Can't obey a street sign? Can't obey the safety rules. I used to work for a boat rental company, and the way the marina was set up, the main shop and docks were at the bottom of a loop. The loop connected to a main road and a parking lot, and was very clearly marked as one way. Now, a patron can get to the lot and the shop without going the wrong way, obviously. Whenever people would drive down the wrong way, which happened a lot, I'd see them, They would go the wrong way to park at the mini lot by the shop or to get to the main lot a little bit faster, like only a couple seconds. Now, because I can see them, and since we're the only agency of the kind in the area, we kind of do whatever. That being said, anytime someone came down the wrong way, I would refuse them a rental. They would come in, ask for a rental, and since we have a lot of safety rules, I'd say no. It went like, "Would I be able to rent a pontoon for 2 hours?" "I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I won't be able to due to the safety requirements." "Wait, what do you mean?" "Well, our company has strict safety policy and requires trustworthiness and the ability to follow safety procedure and clear rules." "And this has to do with me because?" "Well, you demonstrated that you were unable to abide by clear rules when you drove down the wrong way of a one-way." "Are you freaking serious?" "Completely. Have a nice day." That job was the best. We were told not to take any crap because where the heck else are they gonna go? As the nearest lake with a marina was 40 miles away. To clarify, we only did this to customers that were rude. I gave free ice cream to old people to counter my customer self-defense. This is also a really good example of, if you don't think anyone's watching, you should probably still just do the right thing anyways. You never know. You get what you paid for. I had a customer call for a repair on a diesel engine and a front-end loader. His operator diagnosed it as blower seals leaking oil. I went out and checked it myself and diagnosed it as wrist pin seals, not the blower. He insisted the operator was right and that I was wrong. He wanted me to fix the blower seals. I gave him an estimate and marked on the invoice that the blower seals were not the problem, that the wrist pin seals were bad. So I replaced the complete blower with a remanufactured unit, turned the engine, and he paid me. A week later, he called and complained that it was still using oil. He said his operator told him the blower gaskets were installed improperly, so I went there and took the engine apart again. But before I would remove the blower, I made him stand there while I did it. When the blower was off, I asked if the gaskets looked right. He said they did. I told him the problem was the wrist pin seals like I said to begin with. So I started packing up my tools. He wanted me to put it back on. I said, "Are you going to pay me again?" And he said no. So I left. I guess he had to get someone else to put it back together and install the wrist pin seals. I used to work at this job that had some really finicky equipment. So I got to know a lot of the field service technicians that came in to diagnose the problems and do the fixes. They always had some great horror stories about how they would come in and people would act like they knew what the problem was, even though they diagnosed it as something else. It's actually a very tough job because you have to go into a company of people you don't know and they're telling you one thing even though you know it's the other thing. So you can't really offend them, but you still have to try and fix the problem somehow. Those people are cut from a different cloth than I am, because I would definitely get way too frustrated with the customers. And that's all the stories we have for today. So if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks.